Welcome! It's Ruxmalls and Oval Balls, and we're back for episode 22 of the fans' favourite rugby podcast, and we're here to talk all things rugby. And when I say all things rugby, that means more than just the European Champions Cup final. And I'm joined, as ever, by Rory. Rory, say hello.
Hi listeners. Hi, bonjour.
Bonjour, ça va bien. Well, Rory is fresh off the plane. He has literally just arrived home from gallivanting around France, just in time to do this podcast. How's your week in France been, Rory? I've seen on the socials you've been very cultural.
Yes, absolutely. I very culturally enjoyed some rugby, very culturally enjoyed some wine, very culturally enjoyed some food. I've had a fabulous week away, but I couldn't let standards slip. I had to arrange my flights to make sure I was back in time to speak to your good self.
Well, we cannot, under any guise, doubt the commitment to talking about rugby at least once a week. And we salute you for that. Sadly, I haven't been gallivanting anywhere, really. I went to a day festival in Chipping Sodbury yesterday, and it rained. That was cool.
That is a name of a town that it rains constantly in.
Well, sunshine and rainbows in Chipping Sodbury, that's what I heard. Potentially, somewhere I may return to playing rugby at, because it was hosted at the Chipping Sodbury Rugby Club. It's on the list of potential things for post sorting out my gallstones. It may happen. Watch this space.
Putting the boots back on.
It may happen.
Well, I can get you a spot on the Westcliff Lions next season if you fancy a run out in Essex.
You are the captain. TBC. But to any listener out there that does want a really haggard ex-prop who's not sure he's going to be a prop size for much longer, get in touch. Mainly if you're in the Bristol area, but get in touch either way. But Rory, this podcast, we're going to cover some serious ground. Okay, we got to be sharp because we got a lot to talk about. We're going to do some rugby news, some of the things that have come up in the week since we last spoke. We're going to talk about the finals of the European tournaments, as much as maybe I don't or do want to, depends what your view on things. And we'll do a little bit on the final round of the Premiership, maybe with some predictions and some talking points. And possibly the DPRFR, if we have time. How does that sound, Rory? Are you ready to get going?
Let's get into it.
So first of all, we're going to start off with some of the rugby news. And the first thing that springs to mind, whilst everyone was gathered at the Principality Stadium watching the European competitions come to a close, it seems that the bosses were behind closed doors signing some deals to bring in this new Club World Cup. Coming in from 2028, I believe it was the first year it started. The bosses of all the Northern Hemisphere clubs have apparently given the green tick for a 16-team global club competition every 4 years. What are your thoughts, Rory? Is this going to be a new fantastic spectacle of rugby, or is this the latest flash in the pan?
I am 100% willing to give this every opportunity to succeed as a fan. It's one of those things that over the years, most sort of avid club rugby fans would have speculated on, how will the Crusaders fare against Toulouse or Leinster? Or, how would the Hurricanes do against Bath? Those kind of questions crop up every year when you're talking about when the Super Rugby comes around, towards the end of the European seasons, and you start to think, ooh, I wonder what we would do against each other, because obviously very different styles. Typically, we've seen a little bit of that. What happens with the South African sides joining the URC? Yeah, with some actually quite interesting kind of mixed results. Really, it's not been necessarily always plain sailing for the South Africans either at home or abroad. So I'm really excited to see how it goes. My wonder is, does this get us closer to a global season? Will that then give us an opportunity to then align a more regular global club competition and bring this forward from being maybe a 4-yearly thing to an annual, biannual kind of thing?
Well, yeah, the 12-month rugby calendar has long been talked about. This definitely seems to be a move in the right direction. The fact that all the Northern Hemisphere competitions have agreed to amend their schedules to accommodate this, and that it will replace the knockout stages of the Champions Cup, Challenge Cup in the calendars. I think the interesting thing from my perspective is, does that mean in just every 4 years, all the French, South African, like all the teams are going to go super serious in the Champions Cup? Because it looks like you still have your Champions Cup group stage, and then it's the 8 teams that would normally go on and qualify from that will be going into this competition. So I think the only question mark in my mind is, will we see the disparity between the top spenders to the bottom spenders and how serious they take the competition? Will that grow? Because there's going to be some sort of financial incentive, I imagine, to be on this worldwide platform as a club.
Well, I mean, the incentive, as much as anything, is the global exposure, isn't it? Because you only have to listen to some of the discourse that has come out from, say, some of the New Zealand talk shows about rugby, about club rugby in the Northern Hemisphere in the last few months, to know that at the very least they don't know a huge amount about it on a general level. And possibly, even if they do, maybe don't entirely give it the same billing as Super Rugby. So there's a financial incentive in that kind of global audience, whatever.
Yeah.
I also think there's enough time between now and then for everyone to have a fair crack at this.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, let's be realistic. The French sides in particular have obviously got a financial advantage, and that's not likely to change in the next 3 years. But that doesn't mean that in 3 years' time, more than one Premiership side, more than one Irish side, more than one Welsh side or Scottish side, even, you know, Glasgow, Edinburgh, however many Welsh sides are left by that point, they've all got a chance to make a real run at this. So, you know, I'm excited at the prospect. I believe that this has got legs, and I'm actually genuinely looking forward to it as a competition.
Yeah, do you know what, Rory? I'm in agreement. I think this is a good idea. As always, as with everything we talk about, the proof will be in the detail. I look forward to seeing the detail. I'm also looking forward to seeing where the first finals is, because I'll be keen to go and see how that goes on the day. So yeah, watch this space, people, because Club World Cup is now a thing, and we're here for it. Now, going from talking about the start of something potentially quite special to talking about 3 players who are coming to end of something quite special. I think since the last time we spoke, Rory, 3 players who've had significant parts of Gallagher Premiership history already. Mike Brown, Alex Goode and Dan Cole all announcing retirements this season.
Yeah.
That's a lot of Premiership caps to be hung up. So I take my caps. I'm not going to do that. I've got some caps. You doff your caps off to each one of them, what they've done for the sport.
I tug what's left of my forelocks to them all. No, look, this is one of those things where it's very bittersweet, I suppose, in how you feel about it, because all 3 of those players I've enjoyed watching at club and country level. Alex Goode, probably not as much country level as maybe a lot of us thought he deserved. Yeah. Mike Brown, sometimes maligned, often underrated, hugely competitive, combative, dedicated player. You know, I've spoken before how many Harlequins fans I'm sadly associated with, and to hear them talk about Mike Brown, and actually the way that he was sort of exited from Quins, rather haphazardly, to say the least. But the affection they've got for him as a player is undeniable, and you can totally see he's one of those guys that if he's on your team, you love him, and if he's not, you probably hate him, and that is a sign of a serious player and a serious competitor. There
is no greater compliment in professional sport if you are a widely disliked person, because it usually means that you're really good and people don't like playing against you.
It is possibly a thing we may return to later on.
I think we may. I think we may touch on that theme.
Alex Goode, just a graceful player. I mean, in terms of a skill set, as good as anyone I've seen in the Premiership. Did that Saracen side to European Cups, Premierships, whatever you think about the details of how they managed it. What you can't deny is how good Alex Goode was for them.
Yeah.
As comfortable as he was at fullback, safe as houses, and the longevity in that position is just phenomenal. And I will miss watching him play, because some of the deftness of touch that he's shown over the years has just been joyful at times.
Yeah, real classy player, real classy. But building up to
the old stager, the warhorse, the cornerstone, the Kola Bear. I mean, you know, it won't come as any great surprise, listener, as to the sort of reverence that David and I hold Dan Cole in at this point. And I'll be honest, you know, there have been points in his career when I haven't been as charitable about Dan Cole as I probably should have been, when he was probably cornerstone in a less weighty England pack against some very good sides, and probably wasn't getting the respect he deserved from me and probably many others. And actually, you reflect now back on his career, you know, the fact that he's 38, he's been in and around professional rugby since, 2008, 2009?
Yeah, feels like forever.
Feels like forever. And actually, when you look back at what he did, you know, you think back to that first, was it 45, 50 minutes he was on the pitch against South Africa in the semi-final at the last World Cup with Joe Marler, and the shift those two put in and the difference they'd obviously made up to that point. And, you know, countless times you can look back on Dan Cole's contribution to club and country and go, well, what a warhorse. And to have that kind of longevity at tighthead in the modern game, it's not easy to do. I mean, I'm struggling to have even a fraction of that longevity at second team level in the Merit Leagues of Essex playing tighthead. So it's his resilience and bounce back ability from tough moments, and is really something to admire. And what I'm actually very pleased about, and you know, we shouldn't advertise rival podcasts, obviously, but what I'm enjoying is that actually he's showing a side to his personality that I'm sure his teammates and coaches have enjoyed over the years, that we didn't really get much of a chance to see in the days when rugby players were not open about that side of their lives. It should have been.
I completely agree. I think seeing that personality along with a hard man exterior comes quite a actually entertaining interior, and thoughtful and very insightful, and you know, actually, fair play. I think quite often you don't realise you have greats of the game whilst they're with you and whilst they're still playing. But I think he will be one that you'll think back on and think he was one of the greats. You don't get that many caps for England. You don't play that many times in the Premiership without being something special. Credit.
And the same goes for Danny Kerr, Ben Youngs, Anthony Watson. You know, we've lost some real greats of English rugby.
It feels like a real changing of the generations this season.
Yeah, and that's the way the game goes. And there'll be new greats, and there'll be new heroes, and there'll be players that we look back on in a few years' time and go, God, he was definitely one of the greats.
Yeah.
But absolutely. No, those three that have announced this week, along with the three others we mentioned, you know, they stand in the pantheon of greats of England players, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. Final bit of rugby news. It's not news per se. This is kind of based on hearsay. But there's been talk of Geordie Barrett has been talking up the prospect of kind of reverse sabbaticals, where it'll be Northern Hemisphere players going to Super Rugby for a year, much like him and Rico Ioane's doing next year, and a few players have trod that path in the past. And it got me thinking, that feels like something worth exploring. But I was just intrigued to get your opinions on it, Rory.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those where it's always been a lovely idea from a fan's perspective, and probably from a player's perspective in terms of an experience. The issue with it's always been that the money in Super Rugby doesn't match that in most Northern Hemisphere rugby, or a lot of Northern Hemisphere rugby, which is why it hasn't happened up to this point, because, you know, it's not been financially worthwhile in many ways. Possibly that's changed. I mean, I don't know a huge amount about what the wage budgets look like in Super Rugby at the moment, but, you know, I know they've got a lot of growth in playing numbers, viewers, crowd numbers, and that's all going in the right direction, particularly in Australia. So that may well start to then reflect on the monetary incentives to do this. Certainly from an audience perspective, I think this would be really exciting, and there's a lot of players in Northern Hemisphere rugby that I think would thrive in that style of play down there. You know, can you imagine someone like Dupont or Jalibert in New Zealand, or or Henry Pollock playing for the Brumbies. These are, these are kind of prospects that really do get the mouth watering and would certainly make me get up early on a Saturday morning to watch a game.
I think from that perspective, certainly if a certain Mr. Pollock was to be picked up and sent there for a year, me and many others would be waking up and tuning in to Super Rugby a lot more frequency than we do already. So there's definitely something in it. The money thing probably would be a thing. Whether unions would want to kind of back it, because we can't kind of suspect the Irish Union maybe help Leinster with their sabbatical campaigns. Maybe there's an aspect there that could be explored, because that's how it works down there. Like the best players are propped up by the union contracts they sign. That's how they kind of keep them. But yeah, it's just an interesting one. Food for thought, that, Rory.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think what we want long term is a global game, and a global game means players moving globally. Long term, we don't want to have protectionists attitudes to player selection if we can help it. We'd want the English game to be strong enough to survive whilst still allowing England players to play elsewhere. As a good example, and that goes for all the unions. I think if you could be in a situation where actually there's enough movement and also there's enough monetary incentive and there's enough fan engagement that actually it doesn't matter necessarily where your players play, because there's still enough interest in the clubs themselves, the leagues themselves, and that's a long-term goal that we should absolutely get to. But I think we're a ways off from it happening on a regular basis. But I think if a couple of players took that opportunity and went and had those sabbaticals and they were successful, I could see it picking up momentum.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Okay, Rory, let's move on to let's talk about the European finals that took place this weekend, and let's start with the aperitif, the starter course, the Friday night fixture, the Challenge Cup final. We haven't spoken a lot about the Challenge Cup on the podcast, just because there's been a lot of rugby to talk about over these last 21 episodes. But maybe a couple of words about this final. Bath versus Lyon. Probably not the competition Bath were wanting to be part of, but they were in a final, a chance for trophies. And it was quite a good game.
It wasn't bad.
Yeah.
I have a thought on this, and this is going to add more fuel to the fire to the Bath fans who are already unhappy with me at the moment.
At the sold-out Principality.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's be honest. Bath completely overpowered Lyon in this one, and they were deserved winners. There's obviously some talking points to get into about it, but the long and short of this game was Bath were pretty much a cut above Lyon in this one, barring a few moments here and there. What I did think watching Bath in this game was that, as good as Bath have been this season, my suspicion is they could be so much better, but they seem to get very conservative in the red zone very quickly. They, for all of the quality of their interplay, I think in the middle third of the field, obviously what Finn Russell does in getting them up to the right parts of the field, and for the quality of what their players can do ball in hand, they seem to revert quite quickly to a pretty conservative kind of one-out forward dominated strategy when they hit the red zone. Very attritional, very quickly, I think. And look, there's a lot of aspects to that. Part of it will be that it was a final and you play the percentages. Part of it, is that their forwards were getting on top, and they felt they had an edge there. But I think they could have scored more tries in this one, probably. And I believe that Bath, one of the things that Bath will reflect on this season is obviously winning a challenge, winning any trophy is brilliant, and there's nothing to take away from them. They won a Challenge Cup, brilliant, well done them.
Yeah.
And they're deserved winners of the Challenge Cup at this point. But that Bath side could have gone a lot further in the Champions Cup, and I look back on the games that I watched of theirs in the Champions Cup, and I think they took their foot off the gas too easily. Not took their foot off the gas. Didn't go for it. Didn't go for it when they had the chance to put some teams away. And now that's why they've ended up winning the Challenge Cup and not potentially challenging for the Champions Cup with a team that, if let's be realistic, if you put them up against the Northampton side, they are probably to a man as good as the Northampton side.
Yeah. They've shown it this year.
And with a squad depth that, and again, this is something we'll talk about in the Saints part of this, but with a squad depth that would probably have cooked a little bit better towards the end of the season than Saints have been able to, in some ways. So, and I'm not saying Bath would have definitely won the Champions Cup if they changed the way they played. This is whatever way you look at it, that's a hard competition to win, and they struggled against Leinster as much as anyone else. But feels to me like a missed opportunity for them actually winning the Challenge Cup and not challenging for the Champions Cup. But that's an aside, because they did win a trophy.
Yeah,
they have won the trophy, and congratulations to them. And actually, the Tom Dunn try, the Beno Abano try, very indicative of kind of what I'm talking about in terms of the way they played, and they did score tries off it. So I could be completely wrong in my assessment of it.
It was clinical in the sense of they reverted to what they knew would get them over the line, protecting the ball as safe as they could. I think what you're saying is, with the players they have at their disposal, they shouldn't be so afraid of being more expansive in the red zone, because we want to see what Finn Russell can pull out of the hat when he's kind of in that scoring spot. Whereas at the moment with Bath, you kind of know it's going to go one out, a prop after prop after lock after hooker, repeat, rinse, repeat until you're kind of under the goalposts, and it's inevitable. Not the most exciting thing to watch. But like you said, it was a final. It was a final, and
it could end up winning them a treble this year. So what do I know?
What are your thoughts on them saying about this being a treble? Which it would be a treble, but one of those trophies.
You win 3 trophies. You win 3 trophies as a treble. Fair enough. Let's be totally honest about it. The one that matters of those 3 is the Premiership.
Yeah,
realistically, in terms of the. And I say this as a Gloucester supporter, and we were very proud when we won the Challenge Cup. Don't be wrong, and we were very proud we won the Premiership Cup. But unless you're winning the Premiership or the Champions Cup, it's all a bit nice to haves. But actually, that's not really where you want to be in the grand scheme of things. So, it's a treble. They've won. They could win 3 trophies.
Not yet a treble.
Not yet. Not confirmed. They've won a double.
Yeah.
They've won 2 trophies. And they should absolutely be pleased with it, and they should enjoy these moments. I think they, as a coaching team and a playing squad, they may need to reflect a little bit on how they go from here to challenging for Champions Cup. And I think actually it's probably taking the handbrake off a bit. Is my feeling on it.
I'd like that to be their focus next season, because I think of all the Premiership clubs, they've got the squad that can really go for it, I think. And I'd like them to focus on it. I'd like for them to actually go for it. And, if you have got Benetton away, maybe don't rest all your players. Talking about this game in particular, Rory, any notable talking points? Obviously, there's a certain Mr. Underhill, perhaps.
Yeah. So, whilst I was watching this in a very nice bar in southern France, when they gave the yellow card, I was a bit relieved, because I thought, oh, good, they're just going to make this final. They'll keep this final very interesting. And I like Underhill, so I don't like to see him get red carded.
Would rather see him playing than not playing.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's be realistic. Trying to tackle Niniashvili is hard enough at the best of times, let alone doing it legally, because that guy has got electric feet.
Yeah. Of all the Lyon players, he was the one for me that kind of was.
He was the one I was excited. He was the one I was really excited to watch.
Yeah.
And he's off to La Rochelle next season. That could make La Rochelle another force. But it's a red card. It is a red card.
I think from the way Underhill reacted, I kind of said I think he thought it was going to be a red card too. Like he was very quick to okay, I'm off. I'm not going to hang around just in case you review that and change your mind. Okay, I'll take that yellow. I'm gone.
Yeah. Can't change your mind now.
Yeah. You can't do it now. No backsies. No Uno reverse card.
Yeah. No, I think it was a red card. Let's just call a spade on it.
Well, but this may not be the first time we talk about some refereeing decisions in the finals this weekend. But on a more positive note, I would want to also highlight in a more positive manner I thought Ben Spencer was magnificent.
Yeah.
Like,
yes, just steers it so well, doesn't he?
So he suits what Bath are doing so well, because he absolutely directs that pack around like a general, like a field general that stood at the back of an army.
Yeah.
He sends them in wave after wave, and he does have good decision making. His ability to know when to go, perhaps maybe not in the red zone, but outside of that, he's got good decision making, and he makes the right choices 90% of the time.
Scored a lovely try.
Scored a lovely try, even though it looked like he was completely out of ribs. He didn't look very comfortable. I was surprised they kept him on for as long as they did. And the fact that he was playing through that pain, fair play to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, no one has to convince me of how good Ben Spencer is.
It's just Borthwick.
And you might have to convince Borthwick, but you don't have to convince me.
Yeah.
He is and has been a really, really good scrum half for a long time. He was very good at Saracens for a long time, and he's been very good at Bath. There's no real other way to describe him other than being just a very, very good scrum half who's probably been very unlucky not to have more caps. He was obviously behind Ben Youngs and Danny Kerr for a long time, and now he's behind Alex Mitchell and possibly even Harry Randall. He just seems to be, right man, wrong time, really, from an England perspective. But from a Saracens and Bath perspective, I don't think either of those clubs will ever underestimate the impact that he's had.
No, I agree. Were there any other individuals you wanted to highlight at all?
The one I did want to just note, before this game was really put to bed in the first half, when Lyon were put on a bit of pressure towards the end, Demortier had a try chalked off. And then right before half-time, there was a massive amount of pressure from Lyon, and they were really knocking at the door. And it was all put to an end by Ted Hill putting in such a big hit on Guillard, who's a player we really like from the Six Nations.
Yeah.
He put in such a big hit on him that in the bar, just from first view, we were like, that one's got to be a red card. 100% that's a red card, just from like the wide angle of it. We were like, Christ, he's off. And they showed a replay, and it was just the most perfectly timed hit that just sent Guillard doing cartwheels. We were just like, right, that's just the most phenomenal tackle we've seen for all day. And actually, I think Ted Hill's a player that I'm really hoping is going to get his flowers this summer with England, because the guy just pulls up trees every time I watch him.
Just the fact I think I don't want England to sleep on Ted Hill, because I think physically he has attributes that are unique. The fact of how quick he is, how athletic he is, his size and build. Like I think he offers a real point of difference. Whether he's in the second row or in the sixth shirt, I really think England need to start thinking how they can utilise him a lot more than we have done so far, because I think he has got that little bit something special that you kind of need at Test match level. He just needs to get some minutes under him in that England shirt, so he can really start to figure out. But let's round off the Challenge Cup. The game ended 37-12 to Bath, so huge congratulations to Bath for winning the Challenge Cup. Turned out for a final, relatively comfortable victory for them. Lyon probably would have been hoping for maybe a bit more of a competitive result. As we touched on there, Guillard and Niniashvili were definitely the standouts for me in the Lyon shirts. But they unfortunately come up short on the day. Let's move on to the Champions Cup final between Northampton and Bordeaux.
Let's talk about it, David. Come on, tell me how you're feeling.
I've been deliberately quite quiet on the socials since that game, because I have a few opinions on various things. I'll start off magnanimously, as magnanimous as I can be, and kind of similarly to my initial reactions, is that ultimately Bordeaux deserved to win that game. They were the better team on the day. Their game plan in the second half was top draw. They're just consistently pinning Northampton back in their own 22 for what felt like an eternity, and really, really attacking the breakdown, giving us absolutely no room to breathe. Genius. Well played, well executed game plan. Cannot fault them at all for how they executed that. And as a Northampton Saints fan, I still come away from that game feeling proud of the fact that we only lost by 8 points to a side that is putting most teams to the sword over 80 minutes. Northampton ran them pretty close, relatively speaking, by teams that normally play Bordeaux. We kept a number of players relatively quiet. Biel Biore, still very good, but kept him quiet by his standards. Pete Samu kept quiet to his standards. Obviously, Penno picked up a couple of tries. Maxime Luku, well-deserved man of the match. Jalabert, fair play. What a performance. Okay. First 5 minutes. When you lose 2 of your back 3, within the first 5 minutes, and then you have to move Tommy Freeman to fullback to accommodate Ollie Slightholme, who's not played a minute of rugby since the Six Nations, and Tom Litchfield, who is a centre by trade. You know you're already fighting an uphill battle. Do we talk about the Furbank incident? I'm interested to get your thoughts on it, because I've had a lot of Northampton Saints fans in my messages telling me certain views. I have my views.
I've got limited views on this, in the sense that I was watching this on French telly, and they did not show a single replay of how Furbank lost his head. And I haven't seen it since.
Okay, I've seen it several times.
So from what I saw, one viewing, initial viewing, it looked like a very unfortunate collision from 2 players going for the ball in a reasonably fair manner. I couldn't say much more than that on it at this point.
Okay.
Would it be fair to say that Saints fans are less convinced of that assessment?
A lot of them think it should have been a red card. I'll tell you where I stand on it. I have to, and I say that I have to believe it was accidental, and I have to believe it was a rugby incident, because I really, really, really do not want to consider a world where I am a rugby fan where there are players professionally going out there trying to do that deliberately, because I do not want to ever believe that a player would be wanting to do that. Because
what connected with them? So
in the replay, the optics of it aren't great, because it looks like potentially it was avoidable. It was effectively a knee to the face.
Yeah, it looked like a knee to the face to me.
Yeah. So I think it was unfortunate timing, because George Furbank tried to get up and sit up just at the point where Buros was running to get the ball, and he tried to jump over Furbank as Furbank was sitting up. Could Buros have gone round Furbank rather than try to jump over him? Probably. Do I think he did it?
Would the argument there not be that, does that then lose the opportunity to take the ball and score the try?
Well, that'll be his point, and I have to believe he didn't intend to knee a fellow rugby professional in the head, because if that is what's happening in this world of rugby that we are adamantly fans of, I really have to question what I believe in.
I struggle to think that that's what he would have been aiming to do. I'd struggle to
believe it too. So that's why I'm kind of like, it's a rugby incident. As horrible as it is for Furbank, the fact he's had to wait so long to play rugby, and then he gets knocked out in the first 5 minutes. And I genuinely think that did really, really turn the tides in Bordeaux's favour just after Ram had got off, unfortunately, looking like aggravating the injury he got against Saracens the week before. It really put Northampton on the back foot. So
from where I was, I'm with you in the sense that I think Bordeaux were deserved winners of this match. Overall, I would have liked to have seen how it would have played out if one or neither of Ram and Furbank had gone off, because then suddenly you keep a little bit more continuity for Saints and you maybe change the outcome. Yeah, who knows? Well, but Saints ultimately didn't have enough continuity and enough possession in that match to win that game. The turning point for me was probably Pollocks' disallowed try at the start of the second half. If that gets allowed, then cat's amongst the pigeon. Who knows?
What are your views on both of Pollocks' disallowed tries?
Well,
because I've paused that in front of the kicker disallowed try a few times. I don't know how they didn't go to the TMO to review that.
I think it was worth a view, but from what I saw in the replays, because they were showing replays of that on French telly, it did look like he was marginally off, but it was tight, and it's probably one of those where if the ref doesn't call it in live play, it probably doesn't get turned over, but given that he did, it can't get turned back.
Fair.
It's tight. It's tight, but it's on the borderline where you just have to go with the ref's call on it, and that's
okay. I think that's fair. How about the other one?
Ultimately, look, Big Ben. We've talked about him being a bit of the villain in the past. He makes a bit of a meal of it, but Coles does hold him back, and they do get an overlap down that side. So it's soft, but ultimately it's probably right to the letter, because Alex Coles has interfered with a defensive player in a way that has allowed them to get round the defence. And it is soft. I'm not going to deny that. And I'm not saying that Tamifuna didn't overplay it.
So my only query to that, Rory, was at the point of the break, Tamifuna was still bound into the maul.
Yes, but at the point of Pollock going round him initially, he's arm's length to the maul, and that's where Alex Coles grabs him. So in terms of if Ben Tamifuna is going to catch Pollock, and obviously that's a huge if anyway, but at the point that that's going to happen, that's when Coles grabs him, and ultimately it's interfering with the defender. So again, to the letter, it's probably the right decision, but I would have liked it not to have been given that way, because I thought it was a really good finish and a really, really good move, and it would have made a very interesting second half even more interesting.
Yeah.
Who knows where it goes from there, because you sort of felt with the try just before half time where Saints really had been clinging on for that half. Let's make no bones about it. Bordeaux chucked up, BOBRA had one disallowed, Lamate I think had one disallowed in the first time, back of the ball with a strange knock on. And, Saints were really clinging on that game. To get that try just before half time, it was a huge achievement for them. But actually, what it didn't feel like, even though they went in at half-time 20-all, actually, it didn't feel like the momentum had shifted. It felt like Saints had poached one just before half-time.
Yeah.
When Pollock went over, before they disallowed it, my initial thoughts were, the momentum's actually shifted a little bit here, and maybe Saints can get on top a little bit and potentially build a bit of a lead. So for me, that's the moment, because I think Tommy Freeman was still off the pitch at that point. There's 14. So that was probably the moment where it got away from you, because then I think Ed Prowse got carded a couple of minutes later for a high shot.
Yeah.
It's all if buts and maybes, I think, and there's always going to be contentious refereeing decisions, particularly in high stakes in matches like this. And I would say in both finals, I don't think the refs had their best games without being particularly favoured to either side. It just so happened that some of those decisions were very, very consequential for the Saints in terms of potentially winning that match. But I don't think they were particularly good refereeing performances, but I don't think they were particularly...
I've been very clear to say that I don't think Northampton lost that final because of the referee.
No,
I think they lost that final because Bordeaux were the better team, and they executed their game plan better. I still have a lot of question marks over, was it a deliberate knock on? Well, they gave a penalty for it, so why not a card? The fact that Diaby's high shot on Tom Lockett was completely ignored by Marius Jonker, which would have led to him having a red card because he did the exact same thing to Mijana Vanua 10 minutes later. Some interesting refereeing of apparently if you hold players around the neck, if you're not rolling them, that's fine. Some interesting stuff.
Yeah, that was a strange call. Yeah, look, I don't think it was a particularly good performance from actually
the refereing team.
Yeah, from generally, someone who I think is, if not the best, one of the best referees in the world ordinarily. But you have to take the game in the round, and actually, if you were being very brutal against Saints, and I actually don't want to be on this occasion, because I think Saints put up a really, really gallant performance, and really gave it everything they could in difficult circumstances. But if you're taking the game in the round, Bordeaux were, if not comfortable winners, they were certainly comfortably deserved winners.
Yeah. They got that 8-point lead and they protected it perfectly. So in that sense, they were comfortable because they were always 2 scores ahead for pretty much the entirety of the second half. Yeah. Which, that's pretty comfortable from a final knockout rugby competition speak. Fair play to them.
Yeah. And look, I think Northampton can hold their heads up very high from how they performed in that game, but ultimately they were always pushing it to get that squad out as it started, and it backfired because actually, at least in the Furbank instance, it's at least very unfortunate. Ram, maybe you go, we probably pushed him to start with, maybe we shouldn't have.
I'm just glad Slightholm lasted the whole game.
Yeah,
I think there were definitely a few moments where you could see that he was off the pace. There was a few kick chases where he wasn't giving it all. I can't blame him. He hasn't played a minute of rugby for 3-4 months.
No, absolutely. Look, and it was a push, and
But so
it probably just came at a point when Saints just didn't really have the squad to give it everything they could have done. But that's not to take away from some pretty brilliant moments all round. Jalabert's feet for Coleman's try, for example.
Yeah.
I'm sure Saints defence coach will be thinking, well, we should have nailed him. But those feet were phenomenal, and I thought Jalabert would have been my man of the match.
He would have been in the equation.
Was brilliant. Your assessment's absolutely right. Bordeaux's game plan in the end was perfect, and the Le Petit General Luku,
so good.
Just put them around the pitch exactly the way that you should have done. And Saints made things uncomfortable for Bordeaux at times, but in the end, I would say after about, Cazot scored on about 55, 56 minutes, something like that. And from that moment, it only looked like going one way, realistically.
Yeah. It did. So it's like, from a Saints perspective, I would want to say, like, I was super impressed with Tommy Freeman playing from fullback. The fact that he knew his limitation, like his tactical kicking game isn't his strong point, so he ran everything back he could, really. Would that have been Saints' game plan? Probably not. I think Bordeaux picked up on that, and they maybe helped him in the second half because they won the ball back and they pinned Saints back because they didn't have a fullback back there covering. But I think Tommy Freeman's foot desire, the way he made meters in pretty much every single contact zone he went into, so impressive.
This season and in this competition as much as any other, Tommy Freeman has cemented himself in the conversation around who are the best wingers in the world.
Yeah,
I'm not going to say he's the best in the world because we'll get pelters for that. And to be honest, there's 2 lads who play for Bordeaux who've got
good arguments,
probably even better credentials at this point to say where they stand. But Tommy Freeman is right now.
He's definitely the best English winger for me.
Yeah, and to think the talent that there is in the wings in England, that's something in and of itself.
Yeah.
So, and he did a manful job playing at fullback. Because it's not easy. It's not easy against players who can kick as well as Luku and Jalabert, and who just give you so many problems. Like Luku's got such a range of kicking, and Jalabert just is he going to hoof it or is he? Oh no, he's going to chip and gather, and oh my, thank God the ball didn't bounce to him that time.
Yeah, that was how it felt sometimes. The other player I wanted to highlight was Alex Coles, another player who was doubtful before the game.
Yeah, really good performance from him. Obviously, the penalty causing the disallowed try notwithstanding, really stood up and came of age in some ways, I think, in that 6 shirt. Possibly shades of a former great Saints who was moving between the second row and the back row with ease. Really, really manful again. And I think he's another who will be putting his hand up for some more minutes for England this summer because he's had a really good tournament again, and he really has shown up in these games. He was very good against Leinster, and he was very good again at the weekend. 2 tries in a final from a forward in any position is worth celebrating.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't hate the sound of an England second row of Ted Hill and Alex Coles based off of this weekend alone. That'll be quite some second row if England wanted to go down that route. Should we talk about some of the... we haven't mentioned a certain player that much, partly down to what I think Bordeaux did an excellent job of keeping a certain Mr. Pollock quite quiet, kept him out of the game by being so aggressive at the breakdown. Do we talk about some of the post-match antics, Rory? I think there's a couple of things to touch on, maybe.
I'd like to hear your thoughts on it.
So there's two areas of post-match antics I want to talk about. One about what happened on the pitch that's led to a sighting, and two about the post-match celebrations and all the noise in social media.
Please. So where would you like to start?
Starting on point one, I've seen some fan footage videos of what happened that were filmed by people I know who are in the stand. All I'll say is I really hope Jefferson Poirot kind of gets what's coming to him, because from what I saw, he went for a Vulcan death grip on Pollocks' throat and wouldn't let go, and that's why he was so angry, because that's what he did. So probably not on that.
And what do we think led up to that moment?
So from what I've seen, what happened was there was a little push and shove between Langdon and Jalabert. A couple of Bordeaux players went up to push Langdon. Pollock comes in to push all the Bordeaux players, and then, hey presto, let's grab Pollock by the throat.
Okay.
That's what it was in the footage.
That sounds like a bit of argy-bargy and then a slight emotional spillover, but everyone's fine. No one's come away with any great deal of damage. I think maybe a bit more has been made of this than... I realise he's the precious jewel, but...
Are we normalising grabbing people around the throat now, Rory?
Come on, we all laughed when Haskell did it to Marla.
That was round their head. That was different.
Yeah, it wasn't though. And also, come on, I mean, let's put this whole thing in context. I'll give you my overall thoughts on this. If you're gonna give it, you got to take it. And Pollock's been celebrated for everything, and by us as much as anything, for his attitude and his antics and being interesting and being a personality.
He hasn't given any throat. He hasn't given any grabbing people by the throat.
All right, are we going to sit here and pretend that Pollock has not been a wind-up merchant at all over this year?
I'd argue media has been a wind-up merchant.
Sure, but that's part of it, and he's playing as much up to the media as anyone else is. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but let's be real. You know, he's not a shrinking violet, and if he's going to do try celebrations, and he's going to try and get under people's skin, then you know those opposition are going to have a certain thought about him, and they're going to react to it, and they're going to build narratives in their own head that get them motivated to take out of the game a very talented player. And, you know, that's what happened. So all the Bordeaux players in the post-match, you know, doing their pulse check.
I've got a different thought on all that. I'm fine with all that.
I think that's all fine. I think that's quite funny. And Jefferson Poirot, all right, you shouldn't grab people by the throat. Fine, let's all be adults about it. We shouldn't grab each other by the throat. Blah, blah, blah. Well done, us. Rugby values, etc.
Yes.
But they just won a European Cup, and Saints had just lost a European Cup. A bit of an emotional spillover and a bit of argy-bargy, you know. He hasn't taken his head off. He's just given him a quick dig.
It's good to know where the line is. Head needs to be removed for Rory to be a little bit drawn towards an issue.
For clarity with the listeners, David is a Northampton Saints fan, a club notorious for its fair and just opinions about everything that regards Northampton Saints.
All I'll say on the other post-match antics, and I'm all for Bordeaux, you know, mocking the celebration. I think it makes it dramatic. It's a storyline, great. All they've done is made the story around them winning the Champions Cup more about Henry Pollock than about Bordeaux's performance. I've seen more in the news about Henry Pollock than I've seen about Bordeaux because of how they reacted to it.
In the English news.
But as two English rugby fans, I'm not going looking for French news.
No, but, you know, neither are they looking for English news, to be fair. I think they're probably absolutely fine about it. I think if the roast beefs want to talk about Henry Pollock rather than how good they were in the final, I think they'll go say bon, and they'll enjoy the rest of their celebrations. I think, you know,
just for me, my rugby echo chamber that I live within, which, you know, will be Gallagher Premiership centric and England rugby centric, it has been all Henry Pollock and no one talking about how good that Bordeaux performance was. And that's probably the same for Ireland fans, because they'll be in that echo chamber. Scotland fans, Wales fans. So for 4 of the 6 countries that take part in that competition, they're not talking about what they should have been talking about, which was how good that performance was from Bordeaux. They're talking about Henry Pollocks again because of how they reacted.
Fine. I mean, but I think what Bordeaux will say is, yeah, but we've got the trophy.
No, I get that. It feels like a shame that for many the memory of that game has been tarnished, because people aren't thinking about the fact that they won the trophy. They're already talking about the wrong things.
Maybe. I mean, I think maybe we're looking at it through a Pollock lens, and actually maybe a lot of the rest of the world is thinking how good Bordeaux is. And just on Henry Pollocks on this one, because we've praised him, and actually I don't think he had a bad game in the final. I think the stats still stand that he had a very good impact on the game. Very
important turnovers at very important parts of the field,
and could have had 2 tries.
Yeah.
Bar some marginal refereeing decisions. But one of the things that Henry Pollocks would find this with or without the personality that he brings to the game, just by the dint of how good he is. But the fact he's got the ability and the personality, he is going to have to rise to the occasion every time, because everyone he comes up against will have a plan for Henry Pollocks. And they will have games like this where I think pre-game Bordeaux built a narrative. Jalibert was talking about, they'd heard that Northampton players were calling them all mercenaries. I've not actually seen any evidence that Northampton players had been calling them all mercenaries. That might have just been something that Bordeaux fabricated within their camp to motivate them into the game, that created a particular type of feeling towards Pollocks and maybe some of the other Saints players. But teams are going to do that, because that's the type of personality that he is, and that's the kind of reaction he's going to elicit. So,
he's going to have to go through his career being a marked man for sure, and he will have to learn how to adapt to that, because this won't be the last time that there'll be plans for him specifically. This won't be the last time that he's pinpointed and targeted.
No. And it probably won't be the last time that someone deliberately tries to throttle him.
No, to be fair, I'm surprised it hasn't happened sooner.
So, I think the media's jumped on a narrative that means they can get lots of clicks about headlines with Henry Pollocks in rather than headlines with Bordeaux in, because, let's be honest, that is the reality of what it will have been. The reason they write headlines that say Henry Pollocks is because they know fans in England, in particular, English-speaking nations, may read that more readily than they will a headline that talks about Jalibert or Bordeaux or Lucu or whatever. That's the art of headline writing. And Henry Pollocks, a player that generates headlines. So I think that's all it boils down to.
Yeah. And remember, Henry, mockery is the greatest form of flattery.
Yeah. And look, he'll probably, based on what I know about his personality up to this point, bounce back from this stronger and an even better player.
Yeah, it's another motivator, isn't it?
He's going to have to, because these are the type of experiences he's going to have throughout his entire career. And
let's face it, I don't think the Australian press are going to be particularly kind to him, so maybe it's a nice little warm-up to that.
No, and I don't think he's going to be very kind to the Australian press. Then great. That's
what we want.
For a very entertaining tour.
That's what we want to. Yeah, I've already seen is that Tizzano down in Australia has been doing the Pollocks celebration as well. Like, it's a global phenomenon. Like, players everywhere are doing it. So, there's no greater plaudits at all. I think my only issue with it is, and it's nothing against Bordeaux, it's nothing really against the media writers, it's just all the keyboard warriors that all of a sudden say, that's karma to you, Henry Pollocks. What? Karma? What? So you played in the biggest competition in the world of rugby, put in a really good performance and just lost by 8 points to Bordeaux, and all of a sudden it's a karma moment, and he's obviously it's not like he had an awful performance. It's not like he's lost his job. They lost a game of rugby, which, if you hadn't been watching this season, Northampton have been doing plenty of that already. So it's just it's the keyboard warriors that do it for me, and the amount of people I've had in some of the comments and messages saying, it's about time someone taught him a lesson. Like, I don't think anyone's taught him a lesson. If anything, it's probably going to embolden him, knowing his personality
it will elicit that reaction from every other fan base.
Yeah, forever.
And you have to accept that as a fan of his will have to accept that as fans of teams he plays in, and he'll have to accept that as someone who's in that spotlight, that he's going to be disliked at least as much as he's liked in his career. And to be honest, I don't get the impression that he's going to care about that.
No, I'll be very, very surprised if we're going to see any reduction in that over the weeks and months ahead on the Lions tour. And I very much anticipate... No, nor should we. And I very much anticipate next season he will carry on from the start in the Saints team as he has done. Because I think he knows who he is, and I think he isn't afraid to be who he is. And I don't want him to be afraid to be who he is. I want him to embrace that. So
no, absolutely. And I hope, the next time Saints play Bordeaux, he has a screamer, scores 2 tries, they win, and then he can do the pulse check in front of Jefferson Poirot and get his own back.
Imagine that.
Imagine that. Sport can be cruel, but it can also serve up these lovely moments of irony in the future. And
the thing is, I really don't want there to be a rivalry between Northampton and Bordeaux, because Bordeaux's one of my favourite places in France to go to watch rugby. So, but
imagine being able to go there and watch Saints against Bordeaux, and it's feisty and it's brilliant, and then you get to have a great afternoon with all the Bordeaux fans off the pitch drinking some of their lovely wine. Fantastic.
That's a very good point, Rory. Hopefully I can drink wine by that point. Well, I don't... Any other thoughts on this game, Rory?
No, I think...
Was it the jewel in the crown of the European rugby that it was built up to be?
Yes. I think this was the 2 most entertaining teams ultimately coming together in the final. I think the narrative of both teams throughout this competition, throughout the seasons, and actually throughout their histories, particularly the Bordeaux history, the fact that this is basically their first significant trophy as a club, I think this builds to a great story to tell. And if you're a Bordeaux fan, to a fantastic ending. If you're a Saints fan, to a tragic ending. But who knows what happens next season?
It's given me the confidence to think that team can go on and win trophies. Still, it's still got we lost a lot of players this season. This was the Northampton Saints transition year, and we still got to a European final and put in that performance. It gives me a lot of confidence moving into next year. And
from an English perspective, it should take away some of that kind of inferiority complex we've had about our club teams in recent years and say, look, there's nothing that says we can't compete if we play a bold game plan, we go for it, we commit, and we put everything into the competition. Because, as you say, this is a Saints team that has struggled domestically. They are the 7th best team in the league at best this season, and they've managed to get to a European final. So what does that tell me? Well, there's 6 other teams in that league that could and maybe should have done more in Europe this season because they've got the ability to. And, I think this throws the gauntlet down to the rest of the Premiership to say, look, don't believe what everyone's saying about the league. There's enough talent and there's enough ability in this league to compete with anyone across Europe, and we've just got to go out and put it down on the pitch. Yes. I'll ignore some of that because there's a lot of reasons why Northampton are 7th. Maybe it's not the fact that they're the 7th best team, but I take your point. There are 6 teams above them in the table who should have done better in Europe this season. I completely agree with that, and it should give them confidence that they are able to compete because Northampton are able to compete. I take that point, but we'll skip over all the other stuff. That game ended. Congratulations to Bordeaux, 28-20 to them. Really good game. I do think it was the jewel in the crown of that European competition. Really keen to see whether Bordeaux can back that up and go on, maybe win the top 14 as well. Because I don't think it's a they've shown they can beat Toulouse. If they can do the French double, I think that'd be really good for them to kind of really round off what would be an excellent season for them. And let's face it, they had been probably the best team in that tournament from day one. The number of tries that they were scoring, Penno with about 50 tries in the competition. I think they're the team that I was probably, other than Saints, most wanting to win that trophy anyway. So I'm reasonably happy as I can be. Moving on, Rory. Another competition's coming towards a close. Yes. One that you may have a bit more vested interest in than these last 2 finals. It's the Premiership Rugby Round 18, and that is the final round of fixtures. And that means all 5 games kick off at 3:05 on Saturday, 31st of May.
And in playoff terms, it all is to play for, Rory. So let's rattle through the games, pick out potential talking points and where we think these games are going to end and where you think this means the playoff picture will look come 5:30ish Saturday. First game, Exeter versus Sale at Sandy Park.
Well, Exeter won't be allowed to take their foot off the gas for the last game of the season because that's now a non-negotiable for Rob Baxter. So they will be absolutely up for this. But Sale need to ensure they get at least 2 points from this to guarantee their playoff position. I don't see them coming away with anything less than a win here. They are, I still think, the team with the best opportunity to challenge for the title. And I don't see any great weakness in their game at the moment, barring one kind of surprising result at Welford Road, which I suppose can happen to anyone really going there. In recent weeks, they've looked pretty formidable. I see them winning this one pretty comfortably in the end, and Exeter's season come into a bit of a whimper, really.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think Sale go full guns blazing at this. They will be going for a win. I think they get it. The only thing that I'm intrigued to find out is if we're going to see a bit of Feo Oboso in the Premiership again before the season closes, because he's been announced in that training squad. So is he match fit to play Premiership rugby? That's what I'm looking out for. It'll be good to see a Feo Oboso, Brown Bampo Exeter team and see what threats they can provide having both of those players on the pitch. But I agree. I do think Sale will have far too much. I think in the forwards they will sail them and make life really difficult. Next game, Gloucester, final outing at Kingsholm against Northampton.
Yeah, well, obviously Gloucester need to win this, probably with a bonus point to have any chance of making the playoffs.
Yeah.
So we will be going full guns blazing. They'll be trying to do everything to get themselves emotionally ready. What Saints do, I don't know. I mean, my gut feel is they're not going to risk their Lions players for a bit of a dead rubber.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if they did.
I think, I mean, obviously Furbank and Ram won't be available. I would assume they won't play Freeman or Finn Smith or probably Alex Mitchell or Pollock.
So who knows?
Honestly, I mean, to be honest, I'm really just interested to know what kind of team Northampton put out, because obviously that has a huge bearing on this game for Gloucester. From a very selfish perspective, obviously we want you to basically send the under-13s. But I realise that does contradict some points I've made in previous podcasts. So I understand that they shouldn't from that point of view, but I actually don't know. The problem with this as a Gloucester fan is you really don't want to hang your hat on a win for us, because I did that a few weeks ago at Twickenham and was rather humiliated. So
Gloucester are not the same force they were 3-4 weeks ago for whatever reason.
For some reason we're looking a bit shaky at the moment. But ultimately I think we'll win this. Whether that will have any bearing on us making the playoffs, I see one potential opportunity there, but I don't feel that confident. Yeah.
My gut feeling is Northampton they'll send as strong a squad as they could, minus the Lions players, and I don't know what that looks like off the top of my head if I was honest with you, because I don't know what other players, fringe players, would be fit enough to step in for those who are now unfit and would be Lions. I think I would be surprised if there wasn't a real emotional come down within that squad this week. It's going to be really, really hard to get up for this game, regardless of who we put out. So I'm going into this game just wanting to see some good performances. Hopefully some players that maybe we're not going to see in that shirt again get a chance to have an outing. Maybe we'll see the likes of Ruben Logan get a bit of game time and things like that. I'm not expecting a result from a Northampton Saints perspective. I just think I just want it to be a good match, not gift it to Gloucester. But I would fully anticipate a probable 5-pointer for Gloucester in this game, just given the context of what's gone on this weekend and how small the squad we're going to have to select from. I'd be surprised if that went any other way. As painful as it is for me to admit that as a Northampton Saints fan, as Rory so clearly laid out earlier, I'll point out that Rory is in fact a Gloucester fan, if anyone wasn't aware. The next game, again, probably not the fixture you would have wanted to have seen considering your playoff hopes. Leicester Tigers against Newcastle Falcons.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a bit annoyed this is the last fixture for Tigers because I still can't get behind the idea that they are second in the table.
Yeah.
But they are, so I'm obviously wrong on this opinion.
And they're going to secure a home semi-final.
Yeah, so I can't. I must be wrong, but I just can't see how. That's probably says something to me about me psychologically that I find it very difficult to admit that. But
we have been accused in some recent episodes of having particularly strong anti-Leicester stances.
Yes, I fully admit that.
Somewhat, yeah, acknowledged.
Okay, what you have to remember is for those of us of our age, and probably, to be honest, for anyone, Tigers have just been the team that always seemed to just win things when we were growing up, and they're not, from an outsider's perspective, doesn't make them likable.
I'm also a Northampton Saints fan. It's not easy.
Really difficult to be
really
kind.
Not easy.
Leicester will win this, and I hope Newcastle can put up a front, and if they can pull off a shock result, brilliant. But all eyes are on Newcastle from a business perspective rather than from a results perspective this week, and we hope to have some good news there. But ultimately, Leicester are going to finish the season with a comfortable win, I expect, and secure that home berth.
On that note, a quick callback to earlier in the podcast. Does the Club World Cup raise the Red Bull eyebrow even further?
It's got to entice them, hasn't it? Got to entice them. Those kind of global eyes.
Yeah, it's interesting. So the next fixture, I think this fixture is what basically everything hinges on. For a Gloucester fan, for a Saracen fan, for any fan of a club that's in this playoff race, it is Bristol Bears versus Harlequins at Ashton Gate.
Yeah.
Bristol Bears, who have been awful at home, against Harlequins, who've been absolutely impossible to predict. This is a tough one to call.
Yeah, this is a tough one. This is the one where I think this is our opportunity, and it's the one where I think I really want Quinn to do me a favour here, and I just don't.
After all you've said about them in recent weeks.
I know. I realise I'm going sort of club by club in the Premiership, alienating every set of fans against me. Not helped by your editing of videos, I have to say.
Hey, they're still your words.
Yeah. But yeah, this one goes either way. This is a 50-50 call for me. Bristol could absolutely hammer Quins. Quins could 100% turn up and turn them over. I just don't know with this one. A lot of it probably hinges on whatever side Quins send. Whether they risk Marcus Smith pre-Lions tour, that's probably. But I think they'll have to, because I think Jared Evans is injured, and I think Benson might possibly be injured as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think this game hinges on Marcus Smith and whether he does play, because I think he will see this as an opportunity to put his hands up and say, I'm not coming on this Lions tour to just be your midweek fly half. And he'll want to put in... it was a very clear difference last week, his performance. I've never seen a player's confidence and performance turn around seemingly based off of just something so clear as a Lions squad. He looked like a different player. So I think he's the sort of player that could really unlock the way Bristol defend at the moment. So I think a lot hinges on him. It hinges on him.
100% hinges on him. And, if you could turn up Marcus, that would be brilliant.
And then, to round off the fixtures, Saracens versus Bath.
Oh, God. Can Bath please send their actual team to this one? For God's sake, can you not send your under-13s? Because if Gloucester... Can you imagine what my mood will be next week if Bristol lost, Gloucester won without a bonus point, but Saracens won with a bonus point and went ahead of us? Can you imagine what a bad mood I'd end up in?
I can imagine how much more you'll alienate the Bath rugby fans to us already. And just so you know, Bath rugby fans, we know what you've said about us.
Yes, you won't know this, but I'm actually on that fan supporters group. Yes. What I'm hoping is Bath will see this as a... Maybe they'll rotate a little bit post-final, but I don't think they'll be able to take their foot completely off the gas, because obviously they're going to need that momentum going into the semi-finals. So I'm assuming they're going to want to... And they may also want to ensure that Saracens aren't the team they play, to be fair.
Yeah, to be fair, because that's what it would be. And a fit and firing Saracens...
Give anyone a game.
Give anyone a game on their day. Okay, All that being said, Rory, who is the final four this time next week?
Okay, and I say this purely from hope rather than expectation. It's Bath, it's Tigers, it's Sale, and it's Gloucester.
I hope you're right, because I would really like to see Gloucester in the playoff. I think the improvement and the turnaround they've had this season, I would really like them to taste that again, because it's been some time since they've been in that equation. And I think they deserve it based on the overall season. But rugby can be a cruel sport, Rory.
Well, it can. It can. And a lot of me expects it to continue to be cruel this week. But I will have everything crossed. Every appendage I have will be crossed in some way.
Oh, there we go. Well, we'll be reconvening next week, and we'll do a full breakdown, full untangling of all the crossed appendages, and we'll go from there. Okay, Rory, that leaves us with the DPRFR. And for anyone who isn't aware, where have you been? But mainly, this is the Democratic People's Republic of the Front Row, and Rory is the El Presidente of the Democratic People's Republic of the Front Row. And he's looking really wise right now, so I'm really looking forward to some wisdom being imparted on us.
Well, I thought I'd take you into the myths and legends of the DPRFR this week, and talk about a famous DPRF story known as the Karate Kid, where a young man known in this story as Jefferson (brackets Poirot) travels to Cardiff from his homeland of Bordeaux and meets a Monsieur Miyagi who teaches him the ways of karate, and the tournament goes on for 80 minutes. And at the end, Jefferson is given the opportunity to finally fight the evil Cobra Kai (brackets Northampton Saints) champion Henry San, and in a thrilling final blow, gives a perfect judo chop to the throat to win the title. So it's been immortalised in cinema. Many of you would have seen its debut on Saturday. But this week the DPRFR honours its hero Jefferson (brackets Poirot) for some fine karate moves in Cardiff competition.
The earlier conversation now makes so much more sense. Okay, fair enough. Well, if I knew it was going into DPRFR mythological folklore, I would have looked at it at a far more positive light, because you have to respect these things. You can't ignore them. They are the foundations to what is great in the DPRFR. And if I knew that was going to have such a monumental part to the mythology involved, I would have respected it considerably more than what I did of someone just grabbing a 20-year-old by the throat. Fair enough, Rory. If that's what's happening, that's what's happening. I will only respect it. I purely administer the DPRFR. I have no say on what goes in or out of it. So, Mr. Jefferson Poirot, somehow you've made it into the folklore of the DPRFR for your clearly DPRFR rubber-stabbed approved antics.
A magnificent judo chop.
Magnificent judo chop. Maybe don't do it again. But, apparently we're all for it. Fantastic. Rory, you know what's coming up now, don't you? I'm giving you a lot of run-up here, because I'm going to slowly talk as I load up the jingle to end the podcast. So, before I load up the jingle, Rory, do you have any final thoughts for the listener?
Allez le UBB and LA Gloucester.
Wow, that was quick. That was Rucks Balls and Oval Balls, listener. Another episode in the bag. We've talked about a lot. And we're going to be back next week to talk about even more. So, if you enjoyed, give us a like, give us a listen, give us a subscribe, and we'll be back next week.